If you are a health practitioner that used to run community workshop, then you know how effective these types of events are, not only to build an email list, but also to make a great first impression, to position yourself as an expert, and at the very end, enroll people either into a free discovery call or a paid first consultation. Now, with the pandemic, obviously, a lot of things have changed. People had to adapt and switch to other forms to educate prospects. And so in this video, we're going to talk about why webinars are essential for practice marketing. Now, just as a way of background, our team at Big Boost Marketing, we have a number of webinars. We've done live webinars. I'm actually a big fan of evergreen webinar because right now we are really in the era of on-demand content. And so why should somebody wait several days or even half an hour for the next showing of your webinar, right? So if the goal is to get as many people to the 45-minute mark of their webinar so that they can actually see your offer, then you really have to focus on how do I get more people start watching the webinar. And so this is why we like essentially instant webinars where people are opting in on the registration page and then go to the next page and watch the replay right then and there. I admit, you have to try it out. How do live webinars perform versus evergreen webinar? There's definitely a benefit that when you have a live show that you can engage people more, you can, address them by name, and that creates a lot more resonance that people will actually stay longer. So I'm not saying that live webinars are something that you shouldn't be doing, but I think you should always have an evergreen webinar running in the background so people can watch it when they're ready, wherever they are in the world. Now, here's a number of reasons why I think webinars are so essential for your practice marketing. Number one, you can deliver tremendous value in the context of a webinar. And the theory is really that prospects have to spend a certain amount of time with you in order to get educated and become comfortable, to get to know, like, and trust you enough to take the next steps. And so people say it takes an average of 30 to 40 touch points. You could also measure this in cumulative hours that, if you're saying you have 30 to 40 touch points each 3-4 minutes, that probably equals somewhere between 3 to 5 hours. And so when you're delivering a webinar, you're essentially delivering a big chunk of those interactions in one transaction, right? So having an evergreen webinar that's pre-recorded, let's say 45, 60 minutes, that's probably the equivalent of 10 to 15 touch points in of itself. And so when you have an evergreen webinar, people come into your ecosystem, they watch the webinar, that is educating them up very much. Now, the same thing can apply to, let's say, if you have a YouTube playlist and people are binge watching 4, 5, 6 different videos, or you have a video blog on your website and people binge watching something, or maybe you've worked with our team and we've created a mini course for you where you have 10 4-minute videos. Again, this is easy to consume your content, bite-sized content, and we still want to have an evergreen webinar, but there's many ways how you can deliver a lot of touch points instead of one interaction. Now, the reason why, webinars are so powerful because obviously people get to know, like, and trust you. So there's something that they build a connection, intimacy, a bond with you. But webinars are also great to deliver information content, right? The concept, you can shift people's perspective from this is what they believed beforehand, and you shift it to a new set of beliefs. You show them that previously they were going about the health one way, and now they see that there's an altogether different way to work with you and your team. And that's what Russell Brunson calls the opportunity switch. Previously, they had one way to go about the problem. Now there's a new opportunity, a new approach to go about the health differently. So that's the first reason. Reason number two, webinars position you as the expert. So when people come to your workshop, or obviously when they come to your webinar, they get to see you for 30, 40, 50 minutes. And that time allows them to see that you are the expert, that you know what you're talking about. But at the same time, they also see that you're very passionate about the topic, that this is what lights you up, that this is what's motivating you. And so again, it makes it more likely that people get to really know, like, and trust you enough to take the next step, that they can see, I want to be one of those patients that Dr. So-and-so is referring to in his webinar. So again, very easy to establish authority and your expert positioning in the context of the webinar. And this happens much faster in a webinar than compared to somebody just reading a blog post where there's very little interaction compared to maybe a 2 or 3 minute video, right? So a webinar, you have sustained attention and people are sitting with you. They get to read you, get to read your energy, and they can really see that you have authority. And obviously from there, it's much more likely that people are moving forward. Reason number 3, in webinars, there should always be a pitch at the end. It doesn't mean that it has to be a sale. Obviously, when you are doing maybe community workshop, it's very easy to tell people, go to the back of the room and sign up for a discounted first appointment, and you collect money from them, and there's a transaction. On a webinar, it doesn't usually work that easily, even though there are examples out there. For instance, Sachin Patel did a webinar on the GI map test. And at the end of the webinar, people signed up for the test itself, as well as the video interpretation. So you can definitely sell at the end of a webinar, especially if you're an online course. You would then send them straight to the sales page or a checkout page, and people can transact. But when it comes to really initiating one-on-one care, or when it comes to signing up for a package that's several $1,000s, the call to action can't be a direct pitch to a sale. It has to be really to a discovery call where people can explore if this is right for you. And so we work with a lot of clients with FPC, where the model is Facebook ads to a live webinar, and at the end of the webinar, people are pitched into a discovery call. So this is something very natural. This is what we do with our own webinars as well. If you've watched any of the big boost marketing webinars, at the end usually is a strategy session where you get to meet with our team to really go over your question and get custom advice for your practice marketing. Another reason why webinars are so essential for your practice marketing is because it's a one-to-many communication platform, right? It's not just repeating yourself over and over again in each individual discovery call, but this is your chance to have a very leveraged approach, education approach to your audience, where in one webinar, it's very efficient on your time because you get to educate a lot of people at the same time. And then all these people get nurtured up at the same time. And obviously that's true for live webinars if you get enough people to show up, but it can also be true for evergreen webinar, where each webinar instance, there's maybe only 1, 2, 3 people watching it at the same time, but cumulatively the webinar is running 24/7, and that is how you drive up the numbers as well. So again, applies in the same way that this is a very efficient medium to educate lots of people at scale. Now, reason number 5 is that webinars, if they're constructed right, keep your audience's attention, and so people stay on longer. Obviously, when you did community workshops, people couldn't just walk out of the room, or didn't. And so, that's the reason why they're staying there. The same is true for a webinar. You have to make it compelling enough so that people actually stay all the way to the end. Now, there's 2 ways to do it. One, you can do a live webinar and people understand that you have to stay there to get all the information. But the other way is that you create what we call a power webinar or an executive webinar, maybe something that's only 12, 15 minutes long. So you can tell people, it's like, I know you're very busy, so all I'm asking is that you give me 15 minutes of your time. And so maybe that is enough to cover enough ground that people feel comfortable to work with you, go forward with you. Now, reason number 6 why webinars are so powerful is because you can build an email list very quickly. And so I'm reminded to the early days of the pandemic, where doctors would just pull up an expert and saying, hey, we're having a live discussion on this topic. And, in a matter of a week, they had 1,000 opt-ins. So right now, a lot more people do webinars, so it's a lot harder to maybe pull in those numbers, but the principle is still valid. If you can partner with an expert, interview them, then it's the star power of your expert that allows your audience to, say, hey, this is a very unique event. I want to participate. And that's a very easy way to generate an email list. And that's maybe different than what you're doing with maybe a PDF lead magnet or other forms of lead magnet, where you are the one that's creating all the backend content, versus with a webinar, the webinar itself is the lead magnet. And so you just have to put it on, have a good expert on board, and then that takes care of the registration drive. And this is, incidentally, another reason why online summits are so powerful to build lists, because this is essentially a series of, let's say, 10, 15, 20 webinars connected into one event, making it even more powerful that people want to sign up for it because they get access to this collection of experts. Now, we've already mentioned this in the very beginning, but obviously webinars are great at building relationships, building connection, creating a bond between your tribe, your audience, and you as the expert. And that is critical for people to see you as an expert, that they get a vibe of how you operate, that they understand your value system. And so this is a reason why video in general and webinars specifically are so powerful to create that bond, that connection, that relationship. In today's world, information is plentiful. Dr. Google is out there, but what's really missing is somebody connecting the dots, putting the pieces of the puzzle together for people, and be that leader, that guide that can move people to the desired destination. And the last reason I would say about webinars is that you can create much faster sales, or get people much faster into a discovery call or become your patient, because it collapses time. You don't have to have 15, 20 extra touch points. That webinar can replace a lot of those. And so this is why it's so critical that I believe every practitioner, every entrepreneur should have an evergreen or a live webinar to not only build your list, but build the connection and do all the things that I mentioned in this video. So I hope this video was helpful. If you have any other questions, please let me know in the comments below. We also have a lot of other resources around creating webinars, creating your positioning, executing webinars as lead magnets. So check the information below this video, and we'll see you in the next video.